Breaking news as we come on. The deadly mass shooting inside of a grocery store. A gunman opening fire inside a Kroger near Memphis, Tennessee. At least one person killed and more than a dozen shot. The details just coming in. Also developing tonight, the flooding threat as another storm takes aim. The slow-moving system already dumping rain on parts of the Midwest. And in Pennsylvania, this family rescued from floodwaters with flash flood watches in effect from Virginia to New York. Al Roker is here timing it all out. And breaking news in the death of Gabby Petito. The FBI just issuing a federal arrest warrant for Brian Laundrie. Police departments from around Florida now called in to help search a 25,000-acre nature reserve trying to find him. Also tonight, we take a look at some of the other missing people in this country. Many people of color whose families feel their stories are not being told. Border breakdown. Border Patrol suspending the use of agents on horseback as the U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti resigns over deportations. The new reporting, thousands of migrants being released into the U.S., and we go inside a migrant camp in Mexico. The images our team saw. The market Inferno, flames ripping through a massive building, vendors rushing to save their livelihood. And inside the trial of R. Kelly, the legal team of the disgraced R&B singer making their case after the prosecution accused him of using a, quote, predator handbook to intimidate and humiliate his victim. Top story starts right now. And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas. We begin with breaking news tonight on Top Story. Another mass shooting in this country. A gunman opening fire at a Kroger grocery store in Collierville, Tennessee. The images still coming in tonight. That's a suburb of Memphis. At least one person killed and more than a dozen injured. The wounded taken to area hospitals, but no word on the extent of their injuries. Police racing to the scene saying they found people hiding in freezers and employees locked in their offices. The suspect is dead from what authorities believe is a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The details are still coming in tonight. Let's get right to NBC's Steve Patterson with the latest.
Tonight, terror rippling through small-town Tennessee after a gunman opened fire in broad daylight at a grocery store in suburban Memphis. Police say 12 people were wounded and one killed. The shooter taking aim inside this Collierville Kroger's, about 40 minutes east of Memphis.
And he kept on shooting. He shot one of my coworkers in the head, and then shot one of the customers in the stomach.
Authorities say the first calls came in around 1:30. The SWAT team on scene, clearing aisle by aisle, discovering terrified customers and employees huddled in offices, hiding in freezers. Police later identifying the shooter, found with a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
We have 13 victims. Our hearts go out to those that were injured. We do have one fatality, and our thoughts and prayers are with those family members.
The wounded rushed to the hospital, some with injuries described as critical. Tonight, authorities are investigating a possible workplace shooting and whether or not the shooter was fired this morning, as the community wrestles with how this could happen here.
It's horrific. I've been involved in this for 34 years, and I've never seen anything like it.
A community consumed by grief after another American mass shooting, shattering all semblance of peace.
Okay, Steve Patterson joins us now live on Top Story. Steve, we heard there in your report, we're getting a sense of what possibly the motive may be here?
Yeah, Tom, obviously still very early in this investigation, but sources close to the investigation telling NBC News they are looking at this as a possible workplace shooting, that this may have been a disgruntled employee and that employee may have been fired just hours before the first shots rang out. Tom?
Steve Patterson leading us off tonight with that breaking news. Steve, thank you. Also developing tonight, the storm taking aim at the Northeast. Flash flood warnings and watches in effect at this hour, with 3 to 6 inches of rain expected as the area still recovers from Hurricane Ida. The system already drenching the Midwest and Pennsylvania as it moves east. Heavy rain washing out roads in Michigan. You'd see it right there. And in Pennsylvania, look at this, a family rescued from rising floodwaters. The storm also expected to bring damaging winds and possible tornadoes. NBC's Kathy Park reports from New Jersey.
Tonight, a new strong storm taking aim at the Northeast, putting millions in the crosshairs again. Just weeks after the remnants of Hurricane Ida soaked the region, leading to destructive flooding that killed more than 50 people. Vincent Dima narrowly escaped from his home with his family and dog during the height of the storm.
How much was lost?
We lost everything in the basement, 11 years worth of personal belongings.
He's concerned they can't take another hit.
There's water going in my basement right now.
Wow.
As we speak. Not as floodwaters, but the ground is so saturated that I have water seeping in.
Hour by hour, the fierceness and severity of these storms, the intensity remains intact.
Now this new weather system working its way east, packing a torrential punch and potentially impacting more than a dozen states. Pounding rain and flash flooding already drenching the Midwest earlier today. In Northeast Ohio, a section of this gas station's overhead canopy snapping away. Luckily, there were no injuries. The relentless rain making travel treacherous. A trooper rescuing this family in Chester County, Pennsylvania after their car got submerged. And in nearby Springfield, a tractor trailer crashing, dangling off the edge of a major interstate. The heavy downpours making for a chaotic commute for motorists in Maryland and Virginia.
I came down this road and was trying to go back to the tunnel after I came through it about 15 minutes ago, no problems. And I got about halfway through and my truck blew up.
Flood warnings in effect for tens of millions from the Carolinas all the way to the Great Lakes. Fierce winds causing dangerous waves and currents along Lake Michigan. And in Detroit, residents getting ready for even more wet weather this week after a rain-soaked summer.
When you get 6 floods in your basement from June the 25th up to the last major flood, that's kind of sad. It's really sad.
A sentiment felt all across the Northeast. Kathy Park joins us now from Manville, New Jersey. You may remember that's where those homes exploded. There was all those house fires from Ida. And Kathy, we see the damage there behind you. So many families still picking up from Hurricane Ida and now dealing with the severe weather.
Tom, that is exactly right. It really is a long road to recovery. You heard from Vincent Dima in our story, and he said the cleanup effort will likely take anywhere from 6 months to a year. We've also seen lots of debris still in front of a lot of the homes in the neighborhoods in this community, and we have also learned that more than 100 structures and homes are still uninhabitable at this point, including the 2 behind me. We are told that this home caught on fire because the home next door exploded when Ida moved through. Tom?
Kathy Park for us tonight. Kathy, thank you for that. As this cold front moves across the Northeast, millions in the tri-state area are under a flash flood watch. Al Roker joins us now in studio with more on what to expect. Al, walk us through the next few hours and days.
Yeah, it's a real potent system. Right now, we've got a flash flood watch, flash flood warnings, 27 million people. You can see the front really right here making its way across. Some places have picked up 0.6 of an inch in 10 minutes, and it's causing some flooding problems. So this front slowly moves across. Heavy rain will track into New England overnight. Areas of flash flooding will develop. Friday, the front advances across the coast. Showers and storms from Maine to New York City. We're talking storm totals additional 3 to 5 inches from New York City all the way to Bangor. And we now have Tropical Storm Sam, 60-mile-per-hour winds. It's moving west at 16. And the significance of this, right now, we don't know if it's going to make landfall, but it is the 18th named storm of the season. And Tom, only 2020 had more storms than this at this date. So it is still a very potent tropical storm system.
And we will stay tracking that system. Al, we thank you for that. We also are tracking some other breaking news tonight in the death of Gabby Petito. An arrest warrant has been issued for Brian Laundrie as authorities continue to focus their search for the 23-year-old on a Florida nature reserve. NBC News correspondent Katie Beck back on the case tonight.
Tonight, a federal arrest warrant has been issued for Brian Laundrie after a grand jury indictment. Investigators now 5 days into the massive manhunt. Earlier today, Brian's parents seen leaving their Florida home under police escort. The Ford Mustang they say their son drove to the reserve and left there returned after police towed it away earlier this week. With an extensive search coming up empty, mounting questions about what directions authorities will go next.
To never get caught, he has to be absolutely perfect, make no mistakes. For law enforcement to find him, he just has to make a mistake once.
New reports surfacing from a restaurant in Wyoming where the couple dined August 27th, possibly a valuable timeline marker for the FBI. Also, following a complaint, the city of Moab announced it's launching an independent investigation into the way officers handled this August 12th incident, captured on body cam between Gabby and Brian. The city says it's unaware of any breach of policy at this time. Interest in Gabby's death and Brian's disappearance has stretched coast to coast, sparking conversations about domestic violence attached to a tragedy miles away.
Gabby could be your sibling, Gabby could be your friend.
But for many, hitting close to home.
All right, Katie Beck joins us now from where that ongoing search has concluded for at least today. Katie, we know that there is this federal charge, but it's not for homicide. Can you explain that?
Yeah, one thing to really note about this, Tom, because a lot of people are going to see a charge and instantly think it's a homicide charge. It's actually for misuse of a debit card. When you read through that indictment, it says that Laundrie was in Wyoming on or about August 30th, and he debited $1,000 or more with someone else's debit card and PIN. That is a federal charge, and they say basically at this point it's a placeholder. We're charging him with this now, but we're going to continue to investigate his actions after this homicide, and we can amend these charges. They can file a superseding indictment once they complete their investigation. Tom?
Okay, Katie Beck with that new development tonight. Katie, thank you. Tonight, the CDC backing the FDA's plan to give Americans over 65 and people at high risk a COVID booster shot. And as NBC News data shows, the Delta-fueled surge is on the decline. We're tracking the Mu variant from the first identified case in Colombia to hospitals across the U.S. NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has that story.
Inside this hospital near Bogota, the fight against COVID has been raging. This patient, lying face down, told us he'd put off getting vaccinated and got sick. In Colombia, the predominant COVID strain is the Mu variant. It was discovered first here in January.
We can conclude that the Mu variant can transmit 1 or 2 times more than the original variant described in Wuhan in China.
Now, Mu has been identified in all 50 states. It's not nearly as contagious as Delta, but several weeks ago, the World Health Organization labeled it a variant of interest. Right now, it makes up less than 1% of COVID cases in the U.S., though experts say it's slightly more common in places like South Florida because of travel to and from Colombia.
We take everything like that seriously, but we don't consider it an immediate threat right now.
Still, preliminary data suggests Mu might be more resistant to COVID vaccines than other strains. How concerning is that?
Well, I think the idea of variants that have certain mutations that make them able to evade the protection that the vaccine currently offers us against Delta it's a real possibility with variants.
This week, the WHO reclassified 3 other variants, Eta, Iota, and Kappa, to monitoring status, saying they no longer pose a major added risk to global public health.
Should we expect to see variant after variant for the foreseeable future?
I do think it's something we need to get used to, especially while there's really unmitigated community transmission in many areas around the world, around the country.
So many variants out there. Gabe Gutierrez joins us now. Now, Gabe, you do have some positive news on this Mu variant. It may also be on the decline?
Yeah, that's right. The CDC says that it just hasn't been able to compete with the Delta variant. But experts say no matter what variant comes out, some of them might be either more or slightly less resistant to the vaccine. The best way to protect yourself long term against the virus is to get the vaccine.
Now, there's been so much news tonight about the boosters, and a lot of people are going to be asking, how are they going to roll out the boosters? Will the states control the booster rollout?
Yeah, much like the rollout happened for the vaccines earlier. It's going to be up to pharmacies, doctors' offices to be able to get this shot out. But as you reported, there's still a lot of questions for those people who did not get the Pfizer shot, who got Moderna and J&J, and younger people and people in jobs that, may want to have gotten this sooner. They still have no clear timeline, Tom.
All right, Gabe, thank you for that. We turn now to the ongoing migrant crisis in Texas. While thousands of Haitian migrants remain under that bridge in Texas, new questions over where many of the migrants who were there earlier in the week have gone. Morgan Chesky is there.
Tonight, more than 4,000 Haitian migrants still packed under this bridge, surviving on so little for more than a week. While back in Haiti, some who have been deported speaking out. One of them, Fedner Paulina, apologizing to the American people, but saying he and his family hope to make the journey yet again. The rising deportations sparking the U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti to resign in protest. Career diplomat Daniel Foote slamming the Biden administration's, quote, inhumane, counterproductive decision to deport thousands of migrants. Meantime, the White House under fire over these images of Border Patrol agents on horseback announcing horses will no longer be used in Del Rio. And tonight, new questions over where many of the 15,000 migrants who were under that bridge have gone. The Department of Homeland Security announcing 1,400 migrants have been deported and 3,200 are in Border Patrol custody. But still no details on how many migrants were released into the United States. DHS officials have told NBC News that number's in the thousands.
They had an idea that life would be better for them here in America.
So many of the migrants released to wait for asylum hearings coming to Tiffany Burrows' nonprofit shelter.
This time last year, how many people would you help a week?
25.
And today?
In the last 3 days, over 1,000.
Now, her concern isn't running out of supplies, but attention.
The numbers will go down. The media attraction of it all will disappear. And then we'll be hit with another wave.
This problem never goes away for you.
Right.
And an update on those government records suggesting that some of the migrants who crossed this river may have been headed to Guantanamo Bay. Tonight, the White House says there was some confusion, and that was never the case. Tom?
Morgan Chesky for us tonight. Morgan, thank you. And now we want to take you across the border to a makeshift camp in the city of Acuña. Our partners at Telemundo going inside those camps, where many of the migrants say they are now hoping Mexico will give them refuge.
Tonight, with pressure at the Texas border intensifying, on the other side, in Mexico, Haitian migrants are growing tired, exhausted, and now desperate. Families fighting over any piece of cardboard that they will later use to sleep on. Here in Acuña City, just on the other side of Del Rio, many have decided to cut their journey short and stay in Mexico. So many who grew up speaking Creole in Haiti now speaking fluent Spanish after years in Central and South America.
Voy a intentar quedarme en México para trabajar y ayudar a mi familia.
¿Te vas a quedar aquí en México?
Sí, sí, yo encontré trabajo.
¿En qué quieres trabajar?
Yo soy albañil y electricidad también.
And the number of those seeking asylum keeps growing. So far this year alone, more than 18,000 Haitians have requested asylum in Mexico, compared to nearly 6,000 in 2019. Migrants are settling wherever they can, sidewalks, parks, and even the roof of a building. And the children, lost in their own imagination, but aware of the reality.
Sí. Sí. ¿Qué está pasando?
Están deportando a la gente.
The Acuña camp still holding thousands, becoming more permanent by the day. But today, Mexican authorities also adding pressure. At one point surrounding the camp, families feeling forced to cross the Rio Grande, ending up in Texas. Now in that same camp where many have waited for days. The camp in Del Rio holding just over 5,000 migrants. As of today, thousands of other migrants seeking refuge in the U.S. have been released by Border Patrol, allowed to wait for their court date in America. Pregnant women, babies, parents with their young children, including 10-year-old Reina, who traveled to Texas from Chile, thousands of miles away, with her father. Here in Texas, packed buses come and go, taking migrants to this shelter where they're given food and aid. The waiting lines are massive. The men all carrying ankle monitors and citations to appear in court in the next 60 days. For Huguenard and his daughter, they believe they've taken one step in the right direction and one step further away from the camp they will never forget.
We don't even have cardboard to sleep on or blankets. There is dirt everywhere. We go hungry. When you want to drink water, you have to drink dirty water.
The border crisis deepening in both countries tonight. All right, we want to turn now to the growing calls to protect airline workers. Reports of unruly passengers soaring this year, with flight attendants physically and verbally attacked. And today, their powerful testimony on Capitol Hill pushing for new federal action. Dasha Burns has more.
Disruption in the skies.
You are being power hungry bunch of son of a... That's all you're being.
Flight attendants testifying on Capitol Hill today about the skyrocketing incidents of air rage.
The violence perpetrated against workers has been
nonstop,
demanding more action to protect workers.
Now, what do we need? We need DOJ criminal charges and enforcement. We simply cannot accept this as the new normal.
The rise in rates of bad behavior alarming. From 2015 to 2020, the FAA initiated 786 investigations into unruly behavior. But in the first 9 months of 2021 alone, already 789 investigations.
Politely, I asked, "Sir, would you please put your mask on? It must be covering both your mouth and nose." He looked at me, and I will not repeat the epithet he used. He said, "N-word, I don't have to listen to a damn thing you say. This is a free country."
Now a recurring viral phenomenon on social media. Some altercations turning into assaults. A passenger punching this flight attendant in the face, leaving her bloodied and missing 2 teeth. In other instances, flight attendants having to duct tape passengers to their seats to prevent violence.
Oh! This man got the right dentist, that's all I'm gonna say.
Masks becoming a flashpoint for some flyers. Out of more than 4,000 passenger complaints airlines have filed since January, about 75% were mask-related, according to the FAA. Flight attendants begging for more prosecutions and immediate criminal action against disruptors.
Otherwise, we're sending the message to these workers that they are on their own.
The FAA's new zero tolerance policy is meant to crack down on unruly passengers with stricter legal enforcement of rules, including fines and possible jail time. Though it somewhat curbed the rates of air rage incidents, lawmakers and witnesses today say it's nowhere near enough.
All right, Dasha Burns joins us now from LaGuardia Airport live tonight here on Top Story. And Dasha, I just want to get to the heart of this. I mean, what was discussed specifically about keeping both flight attendants and passengers safe?
Yeah, look, flight attendants, Tom, are the eyes and ears for any kinds of hazards on airplanes, on these flights. One of the witnesses today brought up the situation of the threat of a terror attack. It's the flight attendants that are looking out for those cues, and that's a lot more difficult to do when they're distracted by unruly passengers. They're also looking out for pressure loss, for medical emergencies, for fires, for any kind of threat to passengers and to crews. And this is a lot more difficult to do. So unruly passengers creating all kinds of vulnerabilities for folks on airplanes, Tom.
Okay, Dasha Burns for us tonight. Dasha, we thank you for that. All right, still much more ahead here on Top Story tonight. Inside the trial of R. Kelly, 11 women detailing the abuse they suffered at the hands of the disgraced R&B singer, many when they were minors, how the defense is trying to make their case. Plus, the new video tonight of a massive fire ripping through a market in Central America, vendors trying to escape the flames, and an update on a hot air balloon crash that killed 5 people. But we just learned about the pilot. Stay with us. Back now with the trial of R. Kelly, nearing an end after 5 weeks of harrowing testimony. 11 women coming forward for the prosecution detailing decades of Kelly's alleged sexual misconduct. The defense late today beginning their closing statements. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen following it all for us.
I believe I can fly. He was one of R&B's biggest superstars, known for hits like I Believe I Can Fly, selling millions of records, collecting Grammy after Grammy. Now coming back down to earth, R. Kelly stands trial in a New York courtroom, staring down decades in prison if found guilty. Prosecutors laying out the case against the disgraced entertainer in stunning detail, saying Kelly used every trick in the Predator Handbook to indoctrinate, intimidate, shame, and humiliate his victims. The singer is facing a 9-count indictment, including 1 charge of racketeering. The prosecution arguing Kelly ran a criminal enterprise designed to recruit and groom underage girls, using his wealth and fame to hide his misdeeds in plain sight. In all, 11 accusers came forward to testify. Many of them say they were minors when the abuse began. One of the youngest of Kelly's alleged victims, the late R&B singer Aaliyah, who Kelly met when she was just 13 years old, according to prosecutors. The two were married in what prosecutors are claiming was a sham ceremony when Kelly feared she was pregnant, allegedly bribing a public official to create a false ID saying she was 18. R. Kelly! R. Kelly! Allegations of sexual misconduct have followed Kelly for years, all of it bursting into public view with the 2019 series Surviving R. Kelly.
You don't get over a lot of this stuff. period with you.
The Lifetime documentary sparked national outrage, but Kelly has continued to deny all allegations of wrongdoing.
I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. Y'all, I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this.
In their closing argument, Kelly's legal team today dismissing the accusers as liars, groupies, stalkers, trying to cash in, survive off of R. Kelly. The defense is basically saying that all these women are lying, and they're upset that their relationships with Kelly didn't work out, and they're looking for money. Do you think the jury is going to believe that?
I hope not. I think the prosecution did a great job of putting on witness after witness after witness to show that it couldn't be all of them that are lying.
Outside the court, a small but determined group of Kelly fans watching closely. Bottom line is, you think he's innocent?
No, I know he's innocent. I know he's innocent.
With the 5-week trial drawing to a close, the prosecution says Kelly's time is up, telling the jury it's time to hold the defendant responsible for the pain he inflicted on each of his victims.
All right, Ron Allen joins us now outside from that courtroom in Brooklyn. And Ron, we were just talking. You were telling me this is unlike any other court case you've really covered before because of these COVID restrictions. So it's hard to sort of read the jury and or R. Kelly.
Exactly, Tom. We're in another courtroom watching this video feed of the proceedings. We've never seen the jury. They're anonymous. It's 7 men, 5 women. We can see R. Kelly, though. And one interesting thing we learned about him is that he is illiterate. He can't read or write. So he can only contribute so much in the courtroom with those limitations. But he is, at times, animated, talking to his attorneys. But we can't really see his face. He's also masked. So, again, some of the visual cues you can sometimes take from a proceeding, we're not getting that now. Unclear, really, how this is all going.
And Ron, R. Kelly, of course, was a megastar. These celebrity trials sometimes can attract crowds, sometimes bizarre scenes outside the courtroom. Are you seeing that even in Brooklyn sometimes?
There's a small, determined group here of about a couple of dozen protesters. I suspect that they'll be here again when the jury starts deliberating. They're playing some R. Kelly music, which you might hear in the background back there. But yes, they believe that he is innocent. They're here to support him. There has not been a counter protest, but this trial has not attracted as much attention over the past couple of weeks as I think it will in the coming days as we approach a verdict.
Ron Allen at the R. Kelly trial for us. Ron, thank you for that. Coming up, fast food fury. The new video of a woman pulling out a gun inside a Chipotle and threatening workers. And you won't believe what witnesses say led to the armed confrontation. And a warning for parents tonight on Top Story. The popular baby product now recalled over risk of suffocation. Stay with us. Back now with Top Story's news feed, a roundup of what's making headlines across the country. And tonight, the search for a woman who pulled a gun on Chipotle workers. New surveillance video shows the suspect pointing the gun towards the staff at one of the chain's Philadelphia locations. The woman reportedly angry that the store was closing and demanded they make her food. The manager saying once her order was ready, she took off without paying. An update tonight on the hot air balloon crash that killed 5 people in June. You may remember this, a new FAA report showing the pilot had both marijuana and cocaine in his system at the time of the crash. That pilot, along with all 4 passengers, died after the balloon hit power lines and crashed into a busy intersection in Albuquerque. A consumer alert, Boppy is recalling more than 3 million of its popular newborn lounges after at least 8 infant deaths. The affected products were sold by both Boppy and Pottery Barn Kids. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says children can roll over and suffocate. Britney Spears has formally asked a judge to end her conservatorship. In the court filing, Spears' attorney said she fully consents to ending the 13-year legal battle quickly, but emphasized that it's more important that her father, James Spears, be removed. The documents also revealed the pop star is in the process of putting together a prenuptial agreement after getting engaged to her longtime boyfriend. We turn now to stories of missing people. While Gabby Petito's disappearance gave widespread attention, the families of so many of those missing in this country, a large number of them people of color, feel forgotten. Antonia Hilton has their story.
As Gabby Petito's case grips the nation, families of color with missing loved ones remind the nation they're hurting too.
The first 24 to 40 hours is the most important and it's critical.
David Robinson's son, Daniel, is a 24-year-old geologist who disappeared after work one day this past July in Buckeye, Arizona. Police found his car in a ravine, but 3 months have passed. No sign of him or his body.
Why do you think that is, that cases like your son's go unheard?
As much as I really hate to say this, and sometimes I think race is a factor. I may think that, it's not an urgency for us.
David had to hire his own private investigator.
He's my son. He's a person.
In 2020, more than 500,000 people were reported missing. Nearly 40% of them, people of color.
Hundreds of Black and brown families who are waiting to get word of their loved one, who are waiting for a news story, who are waiting for a moment to step into the spotlight and shine some light on their story.
This year, 25-year-old graduate student Jelani Day disappeared on August 24th. His body identified late today. 30-year-old Lauren Cho went missing in June, last seen near Yucca Valley, California. Communities pleading for attention. The same painful patterns among Indigenous women. Homicide is the third leading cause of death among Native women, who are murdered at a rate more than 10 times the national average. And as we've reported, tribal leaders like Eric Hemingway of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians take comfort in the federal government launching an investigation into the abuse and deaths of Native American school children and a new task force to find the missing.
It's the kids. The kids are telling us that you have to look, and you have to look everywhere.
For now, David Robinson says all he can do is pray.
Well, I still don't want to concede and say anything that my son is not here. I just know I'm going to find him, and that's my goal. And just having that in mind, that keeps me strong.
Black and Indigenous community leaders tell us that they've been noticing these patterns for decades and have been trying to share their stories. It's their hope that the case of Gabby Petito now acts like a catalyst that changes the way that we all invest resources and public support in the missing from all backgrounds. Tom.
An important report tonight, Antonia. Thank you. Next tonight, the growing mystery over the so-called Havana syndrome. At least 200 U.S. government workers have reported symptoms of the mysterious illness while working around the world, not just in Cuba. And now the top diplomat overseeing the State Department's response is out after just 6 months. NBC News correspondent Josh Letterman joins us now from Washington. Josh, I know you've been doing a lot of reporting on this. This departure comes after growing frustration by these victims, our public servants, and the public themselves for calling for her resignation. What's the latest on the response to the Havana syndrome, and why is this official leaving?
Well, it depends who you ask. The State Department says Ambassador Pamela Spratlin simply maxed out her allowed hours as a retired employee. But when she was named to her job in March, the Biden administration touted it as evidence that they were taking Havana syndrome seriously, and they made no mention of her role being temporary. And U.S. officials tell me that Ambassador Spratlin had lost the confidence of the diplomats affected by Havana syndrome. And in fact, they got the distinct sense, Tom, that Ambassador Spratlin didn't believe them about their injuries. Now, this all came to a head during a tense call that Blinken and Ambassador Spratlin held this month, where Havana syndrome sufferers said they're still facing stigma from their own colleagues in the government, even being told by State Department doctors that it's just stress or that they're simply getting older and their brains aren't working as well. It's that approach that has senators like New Hampshire's Democrat Jeanne Shaheen saying it's good news that Spratlin is gone and calling on the Biden administration to step up to better care for these workers.
Yeah, and that last point there, Josh, this has been going on for at least 4 years now. We hear what the State Department doctors may or may not have said. We do know that doctors in Miami have gone on the record to say that some of the officials who were working in Havana did have some type of brain injuries. What are they saying is happening, and when are they going to solve this?
Well, the Biden administration says the entire U.S. intelligence community is focused on this with the same sense of urgency as they had in hunting down Osama bin Laden. But, Tom, I mean, the government still knows so little about this that they can't even definitively call these attacks. A senior State Department official tells me they're perplexed and confounded that this is still unsolved. But if they were to go out and call these attacks publicly, it would suggest that they know that a state actor did it. And at this point, they just don't know who did it, Tom, even as a National Academies of Science report found that whatever the technology was most likely some type of microwave or directed energy.
All right, Josh, you could almost argue we've learned less and less in these 4 years about what exactly has happened. Josh, we appreciate your reporting. Thank you. Time now for a look at what's making headlines around the world. A massive fire tearing through a market in El Salvador. Flames consuming stalls selling everything from piñatas to flowers. Vendors rushing to try and save their belongings. More than a dozen people treated for minor injuries. The cause of this fire is still under investigation. Strong words today from the leaders of African nations over vaccine inequality. The country's telling the UN General Assembly they need COVID-19 vaccine doses, with Chad's president saying the virus does not recognize borders, and Nambia's president calling it, quote, vaccine apartheid. Right now, fewer than 4% of Africans have been fully vaccinated. And an alarming report on air pollution, the World Health Organization saying an estimated 7 million people die from diseases linked to air pollution every year, making it even more dangerous than previously thought and comparable to deaths from smoking and unhealthy eating. Low and middle income countries, of course, suffering the most. Now to the Americas, focusing on stories from the U.S. and Latin America. In Mexico, the second most Catholic country in the world, the Supreme Court there decriminalizing abortion. All the while in the United States, the Senate Judiciary Committee today announcing plans for a hearing on the controversial Texas law that bans abortions after 6 weeks. Neighboring countries moving in different directions on this hot-button issue. NBC News Now correspondent Priscilla Thompson has the story.
The battle over abortion rights is raging across the Americas as anti-abortion activists test their luck with the new conservative Supreme Court here in the U.S. Things are moving in the other direction just south of the border. In one of the most Catholic countries in the world, women's rights activists have scored a major victory.
El día de hoy es un paso más en la lucha histórica por su igualdad.
Earlier this month, Mexico's Supreme Court made waves, voting unanimously to decriminalize abortions.
What does this mean for women in Mexico?
Sending a woman to prison for having had an abortion is unconstitutional. Any woman who is in prison right now in Mexico because of having had an abortion, because she exercised her autonomy, should be released right now.
Previously, abortions were decriminalized in only 4 states in the country. In the other 28, an abortion could lead to up to 6 years in prison. The landmark ruling, now considered a game changer that some say could clear the way for legalization of abortions nationwide.
No podía creer que por fin fuera realidad.
Abortion rights activist Veronica Sanchez still in disbelief. She's been on the front lines of this fight for more than 20 years.
Ya no está esa sombra de la clandestinidad, esta idea de que las mujeres que abortan son malas, son delincuentes, están matando a alguien. Se acabó de tajo en términos jurídicos en México.
But not everyone in the conservative and Catholic country agrees with the decision. Leaders of the Catholic Church in Mexico responding on Twitter, writing, "Those of us who are convinced of the value of life have no need for a murderous law like the one they are passing." Criticism of the ruling now reaching the pulpit. This now viral sermon by a priest in Coahuila, at one point asking the question, pressure has been mounting over the last few years, with activists demanding access to abortions and an end to violence against women. On average, 10 women were killed per day in Mexico last year, the highest number in 3 decades.
We are in a revolutionary moment of women's rights in Latin America. It just gives me hope that the movement and the fight is so much bigger than the haters.
Late last year, Argentina became the largest Latin American country to legalize abortion. Soon, Colombia's high court will rule on expanding abortion rights.
What could this mean for the region overall?
It's taking over Latin America, and that arrived to Mexico, is arriving to Colombia. We also saw a beautiful protest in Dominican Republic just a few months ago, also trying to convince legislators to recognize that we need to have full autonomy.
These changes aren't happening everywhere. In El Salvador, having an abortion carries a sentence of up to 40 years in prison. Back in Mexico, Sanchez says this fight is far from over. But today, she celebrates.
Las mujeres hoy sí tenemos algo que celebrar. El aborto significa para las mujeres la libertad.
All right, Priscilla Thompson joins us now on set. So, Priscilla, clear something up. It's decriminalized, but that doesn't necessarily mean abortion is now legal in Mexico.
Exactly. So a woman can no longer go to jail for having an abortion, and our activists are currently working with women who may be in prison for having an abortion to have them petition a judge to be released, have their criminal records cleared in order to regain their lives. But activists say that the next steps are going to be pressuring the states to create laws that will regulate the abortion services, and also ensuring that women have access. And that is really what's going to sort of drive the path to legalization.
Okay, Priscilla Thompson for us tonight. Priscilla, thank you for that report. And tonight on NBC News Now, our Morgan Radford hosts Generation Latinx, highlighting the Latino experience in America. Here's a preview.
Tom, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you, and I'd love to invite all of our viewers to join me for a special one-hour program tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll be focusing on the Latino community right here in the United States, and we're really going to explore some important topics like the Latino population boom, politics, the ever-expanding role of diversity, how Latino-led businesses are now finding success, and even what it means when you hear someone say they are Latinx. We've got some great guests, including actor Las Alonso and finance podcast host Janice Torres Rodriguez. So we really hope that you can join us because this is a conversation for everyone. Tom, back to you.
Morgan, we look forward to that. Coming up, the water crisis in the West. Lakes Mead and Powell at their lowest levels ever, and it could turn into an energy crisis for millions in the Southwest. Jacob Soboroff, live on Top Story to explain. Stay with us. Tonight on Top Story, we are taking a closer look at some troubling new data of a river that serves 40 million Americans and helps generate power for millions more. NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff shows us how close Lake Mead is to Deadpool.
Lake Mead is vanishing before our eyes. It's at its lowest level in history since it was built in the 1930s. The last time the lake was at full pool, it was 1983. Now, it's in a countdown to Deadpool. On June 9th, the water level of Lake Mead dropped below an elevation of 1,075 feet. On August 16th, a water shortage was declared by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, the first ever federally declared water shortage in history. It means Tier 1 water cutbacks go into effect January 2022. Arizona will be the most impacted to start, losing 20% of the water supply from the Colorado River. Households will need to start conserving water. Some farmers have already let fields go fallow or switched to less water-intensive crops. But Lake Mead dropping below 1,075 feet was just the first of 4 major milestones to watch. Tier 2 water cutbacks begin at 1,050 feet. Those will be more severe and will affect city centers like Phoenix. Benchmark 3 is when the turbines at the Hoover Dam will no longer work. That's 950 feet below 900 feet. Deadpool. That means no water can leave the reservoir. The Hoover Dam provides enough power each year to serve 1.3 million people across Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona, and help keeps the lights on in Vegas. Losing that clean energy is expected to happen by 2024. But the water level's been dropping faster than previously expected. And now that we're lower, it takes even less water to drop every foot. And it's not just Lake Mead that's vanishing before our eyes. In July, Lake Powell, further up the Colorado River on the Arizona-Utah border, hit its lowest level in over 50 years. About 40 million people rely on water from throughout the Colorado River. Water cutbacks will hit farmers first, then Native American reservations, companies, and big cities. Outside the Colorado River Basin, Lake Oroville in California already dropped to a record low. That shut down the power plant there for the first time in history. A glimpse of what's to come: shifting shorelines, relocation of marinas, water cutbacks, and a blow to hydropower. The new normal of America's West.
All right, Jacob Soboroff joins us now live here on Top Story. Jacob, you mentioned in your piece that these states out west are on track to lose their share of water from the Colorado River in just a few years, and that just sounds like an emergency situation, but they're trying to combat this?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing, Tom. And I hate to be drastic or a downer, but really it's going to involve a change of life as we know it throughout here in the Southwest. You heard that in Arizona, they're already starting those water cutbacks. The idea that the Hoover Dam could lose the capability to produce that clean energy for all of the states that rely on the power will be drastic. If you want to keep that energy clean, you're going to have to turn to other sources like wind and solar, but the battery capacity is not yet there to use that. Out here in California, they're looking at even more radical ecological solutions. On the one hand, they're looking at the ocean to potentially bring in water sources because of the amount of water that we're going to lose from desalination plants. But they're also looking at things, innovative things like they do in Singapore, including recycling our wastewater here to have another drinking supply to sort of supplement some of that stuff that we're losing. It is a very serious problem here in the Southwest, Tom, and one that there is no solution for quite yet.
And I know you're going to be on top of it till the end. All right, Jacob Soboroff with a very creative and telling report there. Jacob, thanks so much. Still ahead, he is the most followed artist on TikTok, but all of his subjects are strangers. This is such a cool story. We're going to introduce you to the 25-year-old artist behind these viral, on-the-spot subway portraits and how he says it all began. Stay with us. Finally tonight, New York City artist Devin Rodriguez is racking up millions of views on TikTok for his surprise subway portraits. And now he's the most followed artist on the platform. Savannah Sellers traces the young star's rise to fame.
This is my favorite thing to do. I always said if I could draw portraits for the rest of my life, I'd be happy.
Growing up in the South Bronx and raised by his grandmother, Devin Rodriguez always knew he wanted to be an artist.
Tell me how a kid from the South Bronx decides, I want to do art.
So I've always been into art my whole entire life. Ever since I was like 4 years old, I just loved to draw. Then when I got to middle school, I was doing graffiti, but I wanted to draw realistic.
So as a teenager, Devin turned to painting portraits. Year after year, Devin worked hard to perfect his craft, practicing by drawing strangers in a place that was familiar to him, the New York City subway. But it wasn't until last year, in the middle of the pandemic, when Devin began posting his subway sketches on social media, that people took notice.
What made you think, I'm going to get in the TikTok game?
So during quarantine, everybody was locked up in their homes and bored. And I was on Instagram and I was seeing these young kids that were going viral and like living like this big life. So then when I saw TikTok, I was like, okay, maybe this could be the way. I'm gonna go back to the subway and do sketches. People are wearing their masks now, and let's see how that goes.
Does anyone ever look at you like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you looking at me?
Actually all the time, but you know, then I'll start to explain to them, and then they're like, oh, really? Like, oh, okay, draw me. Excuse me, miss, I did this drawing of you.
Devin's drawings went viral. His first post racked up nearly 5 million views. Then his next one, 17 million.
Oh my God, no way! People would message me like, oh my God, like, I watch your videos and it helps me get through my anxiety and depression, and they just make me smile. I never thought it would lead to that.
Today, with 19 million followers and counting, Devin is now the most followed artist on TikTok.
You're a real artist, but then you're also a social media star.
Yeah.
How did the two kind of meet for you?
I think I got lucky. I didn't like get a lot of attention as a kid, so I just think it pushed me to like, okay, how am I gonna get out there and try everything at my disposal, and finally something worked really well.
So very cool. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for Devin on the subway. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York, and tune in tonight at 9 for Generation Latinx, the NBC News special on the Latino experience in America. I'll be back here tomorrow. Have a great night. Thanks for watching Top Story. Adios.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.